Hi, welcome to the Stories Beside channel. Enjoy watching. Liam is one of the richest and most influential men in the region. In deep thought, he sat at a festively set table in an expensive, luxurious restaurant. The banquet to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the brick factory required his presence, as much as he didn't want to avoid it. Before the governor, he could not leave. After all, he is the head of the plant and the region's largest startup company, which started with this plant in the distant 1990s. And the governor was in no hurry to leave. It was evident from everything that he liked the atmosphere. And Liam was important to him. One might say, a key figure. Liam invested well during his campaign, both in terms of money and manpower. Liam respected the governor, or maybe even feared him. Only Liam himself could barely stand the oblast-wide gala event with which today began. And now the banquet has to sit through to the triumphant end, wearing a mask of grandeur and pride. The media did not allow him to set foot almost at the banquet. Everyone was taking pictures and asking questions about the future. Liam, on the other hand, was carried away into the past, which he couldn't change. Thank God, at least they left him alone in the restaurant. Those pesky reporters just wouldn't let them in. But even without them, everything was weighing on the company owner today. And when Noah the governor would go away, Liam could quietly follow his example. And why? Is Emma the only one hanging around him? Maybe she is the reason he doesn't believe. Emma is Liam's second wife, with whom he found comfort after Sabrina's death. With his first wife, he lived with her for nearly 30 years. Together they went through, as they say, fire, water, and brass pipes. She was more than his wife. She was a faithful friend, a comrade in arms, a reliable companion. Only he did not keep her safe. 2 years ago, the battle with cancer ended in complete defeat. His beloved Sabrina died. The 1 million patients and doctors at the best clinics in the world didn't help. How insignificant did Liam feel then? Emma appeared at the most difficult moment of despair and was a breath of fresh air. Her youthful energy brought her back to life without the lingering widower. And 3 months ago, he decided to remarry, even though it cost him his good relationship with his only daughter, Camilla. His girl, however, had always been spoiled and capricious. Money spoils children. Liam was sure of that now. Study abroad. Endless travel. Virtually no parish had rejected me. It's to Camilla's advantage, father only remarked. It was too late. Sabrina was already gone. His pillar, including the upbringing of his daughter. The wife had always been sure that Camilla, despite her caprices, was a responsible, sensible person. But could it be that her daughter had been so affected by her mother's death? Emma opened Liam's eyes to the true state of affairs that concerned Camilla. These revelations proved painful. The daughter spent huge sums on obscure projects, spent time with dubious companies, and ignored any comments from her father. Of course, she wasn't happy with her stepmother, who was only 7 years older. She tried to talk her father out of getting married. He could understand that, but he did his own thing. And that decision ruined the relationship with his daughter. Sometimes Liam doubted the rightness of his choice, but more often, Emma gave him the love and care he so desperately needed and provided indispensable help. But at least now, when he did not want to communicate with the governor, his wife was happily protective of him. And the governor himself clearly enjoyed her company. Liam realized that, in his mind, he was contradicting himself. 1 minute he didn't like Emma hanging around the governor, and the next he was suddenly happy about it. What nonsense is this? And yet the main reason for today's deep thoughtfulness and the sadness had nothing to do with the death of his wife, not with ruined relations with his daughter, not with fatigue from the Jubilee celebration, but with completely different events. The brick factory whose anniversary was being celebrated that day had been bought by Liam and his friend Elijah in the early 90s for 0.03, as he himself had once said. In reality, of course, the amount was different, and it was not easy for the two young friends of the time to collect it. They nevertheless took a risk, borrowed money at the interest of local authorities, and bought an already closed and half-destroyed factory built at the beginning of the last century, which they were able to restore, revive, and turn into a successful enterprise in a fairly short period of time. That's how the two comrades started the business. Discovering their entrepreneurial talent, Liam and Elijah, over the course of a few years, bought several more manufacturing facilities in the city for next to nothing, but not in joint ownership, but each separately. Elijah became the owner of a bread factory, a bakery, a business, and a dairy. Liam purchased a mortar plant and a building materials base. After a dozen years, both companions managed to earn a solid capital. Liam named his company Launch and clearly defined the direction of his work. Later, he opened a construction company whose development quickly took off. Elijah's business focused on the production and sale of bread and milk. Later, his company, Eco Product, took up vegetable and fruit growing. But there was still development needed in that direction. On the whole, Eco Products flourished and brought in a solid income. Gradually, the two friends began to communicate less. Each rotated more with people useful to his personal business, but their rare meetings were enjoyable for both of them until the question of dividing the joint venture came up. The brick factory was still an asset they shared. When Liam started to modernize the plant, Lucas did not support it and refused to sell his share. Benjamin threw a straight brick, which doesn't fit in any way with your main line of work. You went into the food business. Sell me your share. I've got big plans. I'm putting in new lines to make colored bricks. Liam, I'm sorry, but I have a growing son who's interested in the construction industry, so I'd like to pass my share to him as a legacy, Elijah answered. When Liam failed once again to negotiate the sale of the factory's share, he decided to send his assistants to negotiate. The deputies convinced him of this. What he did not know was that the deputies had found some special leverage they were going to use on Lucas to force him to make a deal. In fact, it was like blackmail. But he found out about that later. At the time, Liam was too busy with his wife's health, so he didn't find out all the circumstances of the impending negotiations. How could you do such a thing? Elijah shouted indignantly into the phone. Your people threatened me and my family. You see, I did not expect this from you. You stole from me. And then the connection was suddenly cut off. When Liam returned home with his dying wife, his first news was that Elijah and Laura had died in a car accident. It shocked him, but he didn't have time to deal with what had happened. The next day, Sabrina died. He didn't remember well the first days after his wife's death. Immediately after the funeral, he and his daughter went to an island in the ocean, believing it would make it easier for him to recover. But it didn't help. A couple of weeks later, he returned, tried to get back to work, and couldn't. Depression and apathy set in. Again, he gave everything to his deputies. They'd assured him that everything was going according to plan, and that he had nothing to worry about. It was not until 6 months later that he learned that there were rumors in business circles that he was to blame for Elijah's death. Liam invited his deputies and only then found out that Elijah had actually managed to rewrite almost all of his business against him before his death. And the business, not just half of the brick factory in question, paid a startup company for multi-million-dollar assets. It's ridiculous money, far from its real value. How did this happen? In complete shock, he asked his subordinates, who prepared the documents, who gave the order. The head of the legal department was invited, and it was Emma, who later became his wife. Liam saw her for the first time, even though she had been working for 7 months, and she was working successfully, as the deputies had assured him. I'm sorry, Liam, but you personally gave the order to prepare the documents and deliver them. Lucas nonchalantly declared when the director invited her into his office for a private conversation. True, that was more than 6 months ago. Perhaps you've forgotten. You had a lot on your mind at the time. She spoke with such confidence and looked so sympathetic and understanding that Liam actually doubted his memory. Had he really forgotten? He didn't seem very old at only 54. In fact, Some of his peers hadn't lived to be that age. How could he be so crazy as to unintentionally steal his friend's business? You can't ask him now. He and his wife both died, now in connection with the anniversary of the brick factory, which he did not get at all what he wanted and which was associated with such traditional events. The depressive state had taken its toll again. Liam's spirits were bad. He poured himself a glass of whiskey and drank it in a volley. A pleasant warmth poured out of him. Liam experienced moments of pleasant lightness again and again. When the third portion of the expensive strong drink was taken, Emma came up to him. "Liam, the governor is leaving. We have to see him off." So he said, louder than he should have done. When the wife left the restaurant with the governor, Liam called the waiter and told him to bring another bottle of whiskey. Now one of his security guards approached him. "Liam, were you going home right after the governor left?" He reminded me, leaning toward Liam's ear. "Are you going to tell me what to do?" The jolt of indignation came from the juggernaut of the loveliest boss. "Fuck you." There was some foul language that followed. Who among the guests is surprised? Who stared at him with derision? Liam pushed the guards away and moved toward the restaurant's emergency exit. As drunk as he was, he knew perfectly well that he did not want to run into the governor. He walked through the kitchen of the restaurant, dropping off some dishes and furniture along the way, opened the door, and found himself in Death Alley. The guard tried to follow him out. "Did I tell you where to go?" Liam yelled at him and pushed him inside. The force was enough. He closed the door, propping it up with some heavy crates, which he barely managed to move. One of them caught on the handle and jammed the door. "There will be something else to show me." He moved down the alley, not paying attention to the guard drumming on the doors and appealing to his mind. At the corner, he turned and walked to the next corner. Then he turned again. His alcohol-clogged mind refused to recognize that what he was doing was stupid and would surely put himself in danger. After a while of meaningless wandering through unfamiliar, sacred alleys, Liam realized he was lost. He found himself among the old two-story buildings, which had been rebuilt many times, and their owners barked at him from behind a leaning fence. But then, for some reason, it became silent. "James." He called to the guard. But no one answered him, of course. "Where is it?" I asked Liam for myself. "I have to make a phone call." He was surprised to find himself holding in one hand the bottle of whiskey that the waiter had brought just before he decided to leave. With his free hand, Liam checked his pockets. There was no phone in his pockets. He left it on the table. Calling didn't seem to work. He commented aloud on the lack of a phone. And then he heard footsteps behind him and happily turned around, confident that the guard was his. "I found James," said Liam, and staggered back. In front of him stood two complete strangers and what appeared to be marginal-looking lone streetlights a few feet away, faintly illuminating this section of the alley. Liam could not see them in detail. Bums or bandits. Instantly sober, Liam tried to understand. "Levka for a price," said one of them, a lanky man of indeterminate age, pointing the light of a cell phone flashlight right in Liam's face score. The young man was squinting against the light and fixing his tie at his sides. "It's important," Liam began. "Please tell me how to get to the Prospect of the World, because I'm a little lost." "William, he's lost. The long-haired one." The hush sleepers ordered the second stocky, broad-shouldered tree. "Hurry up and check your pockets." They didn't seem to hear what Liam had just told them. "Excuse me." The businessman tried to start his speech again, when the long-haired man snatched the bottle from his hands. "Of course, take it away. But can you tell me how to get through?" "Shut up, uncle." The long-haired man, meanwhile, is already going through William's pockets. The one on his mouth disappointedly informed him. "He's chunky, but he has a watch." "Take it." Liam took it off obediently. "The jacket is not bad either," the stocky fellow said. "Take it." Liam immediately agreed and handed them the jacket from a new custom-made suit just in time for the anniversary. "It's a bit big," The stocky one commented as he put it on. "What else have you got?" "Nothing else." "I'm confused," Liam said. "Now, how am I supposed to get out of here?" "Liar, uncle," the lanky one declared. "Take off your ring and my ring." Lord, he had completely forgotten the large, flat, expensive engagement ring and ring with a large, expensive stone, once given to him by his late wife Farah. Liam tried to take them off, but apparently his fingers were cut off, and he failed. "I can't," he said doomfully. "Sleeper, help, Major." The stocky man commanded, and the lanky man drew his knife. Its blade gleamed in the light of the full moon. Liam appeared from behind the clouds, nervous. "Well, if you help me out of here, I'll thank you generously." "Yeah, I found fools," declared the long-haired man and grabbed him by the arm. "Help," Liam screamed, took a hard kick to the stomach, which bent him in half with pain. The long-necked man laughed, but suddenly his laughter was interrupted. "Who are you?" he asked someone. When Liam sprawled, he saw another tall and stout man beside him. "Put away your knife and get the hell out of here," said the unexpected defender Liam Dmitrievich. Having just lost hope of a favorable outcome from the meeting with the bandits, he squared his shoulders. "Or what?" impudently declared Longhaired. "You'll find out now." Liam hasn't been in a fight since his college days, but his hands don't seem to have forgotten. Now that he has an unexpected partner, he should take his chance to fight back. He was happy to punch Karen sharply in the jaw with all of his might, and the long-haired man was already lying on the ground, being pounded by a stranger, or the horse Liam. The chunky one was on the ground, beaten by the stranger or the horse, Liam. He defended himself and tried to strike, but the forces were clearly unequal, and soon the businessman couldn't stay on his feet. He tried to protect his face with his hands, but got punched in different parts of his body. At first, it hurt. Then the pain dulled. And then he heard a siren and passed out, getting hit in the head. When he opened his eyes, he saw a man in a blue medical uniform standing in front of him, shining a small flashlight in his face. "Where did he?" asked Liam. "Who?" "The guy who stood up for me. They've already taken him to the hospital. The situation there is more complicated than yours. A stab wound." "Oh my God. It's my fault. Give me the phone. I need to make an urgent phone call." Lion was lying on a comfortable bed in the VIP ward of the center, the regional hospital. He ate an omelet with mozzarella and tomatoes, with tomato juice. From time to time, he cast a glance at the bed next door, where the young man who had stepped in for him the previous night was lying under an IV. He looked to be in his 30s, maybe a little more, maybe less. It was hard to tell his age from his thick beard, which looked like it had not been touched by a barber's hands in a long time. The dark hair also looked long and uncut, and it covered a rather high forehead. The guy was covered with a blanket up to his chin. Only his arm, which was attached, dripped on top of the blanket. It was clear that he was taller than average and of a fairly strong build. He had not yet regained consciousness after the operation, and Liam waited patiently until he could finally talk to him and thank him. Liam himself, after yesterday's fight, he got off with multiple bruises and a mild concussion. However, he felt surprisingly fine. There was no nausea. The warm headache was almost painless. The restaurant food pleased their taste and appearance. He wanted to go home soon. How lucky was he that this young man wasn't afraid to step in. He made Liam perk up and feel younger. Except, unfortunately, he didn't escape the stabbing. But Liam immediately got the best doctors to take care of him and put them in the same room. "Do you think he could use a TV?" Liam asked the young nurse who was taking away the dirty dishes. She smiled and handed him the remote. Liam pressed a button and turned on the big TV hanging on the wall. Immediately, he was on the regional news. There was nothing in the crime bulletins about last night's incident. His assistants had arranged with the police to keep Liam's name out of any reports. Another nurse came in to turn off the IV, and the guy in the next bed immediately opened his eyes. "How are you feeling?" she asked. I'm fine. He stood up a little and looked around. Am I in a hospital? Yes, and you should lie down, she commanded. The doctor will be here soon. I'll let him know you're awake now. Well, hello, my savior. Liam said hello as soon as the nurse came out. I would like to shake your hand, but I can't get up myself, and you're supposed to be lying down. Thank you so much for standing up for me last night. I don't know how my meeting with those scumbags would have ended if you hadn't come to my rescue. The boy responded to the greeting with his hand. He touched his stomach under the blanket. I was operated on. Yes, it was all done to the highest standard. I took care of it. Let's check with the doctor about what you can eat. You can order all kinds of food from the restaurants. We'll have menus delivered as soon as possible. I'll pay for everything. I hope you won't mind. No, I don't mind. By the way, my name is Liam, the owner of Start. What's your name? Oliver? Oliver. What's your last name? I don't know. Are you saying that after yesterday's fight you have memory loss anxiety? Liam asked. No, it has happened before. How did it happen? I don't know much about myself. And I remember being in the same neighborhood where the fight happened yesterday. A month ago, an old lady saw me. How I ended up there, I don't know. I didn't know where I was. I didn't remember how I got there. All I remembered is that my name is Oliver. The old lady took pity on me. She invited me to her house. I stayed with her for the last month. And last night, I heard your cry for help and decided to intervene. And Grandma Valia must have called the police. Thank her very much. So what do we do with you now? Liam thought about it. Okay, we'll figure it out. I'll help in a moment, he declared. A little later, the doctor examined the boy and said that no major organs had been affected and that he could safely expect a quick recovery. When Liam's daughter, Camilla, arrived, the father noticed. Her curious and appraising glance toward Oliver, he introduced them to each other. Who is this guy? Why are you in the same room with him? Whispering and leaning into his father's ear, asked the girl when his roommate covered his eyes again. He saved me, Camilla answered just as quietly. Why did you go anywhere without James? She said it indignantly. The question is inappropriate. Don't you dare make excuses for your father, Liam snapped at her. Why don't you tell me how you are doing with your new project? Already with a smile, he asked. Camilla finally decided to open her own, quite acceptable business. That very much pleased her father. That's just the direction she chose, not a family business. Women's beauty salon barbershop is simply a steep and expensive barbershop for men. Emma did not like the idea fundamentally, but his father easily invested in this project. Since my daughter used to do even less promising things, she invested a solid sum in a shelter for homeless animals, then got into yoga and drank a bunch of money into it. A country club for the passionate and dedicated. Then she joined a green organization and flushed a bunch more money down the drain on their sometimes illegal events. After one unauthorized rally during which a fight broke out, Camilla ended up at the police station, where she spent the whole night until her father got her out. He really wanted his daughter to learn how to earn her own money. He thought it was an important skill, even for the well-to-do daughter of a millionaire father. The opening of the salon next week was announced by Camilla. I had hoped to see you among the honored guests. You'll have time to heal. Or should I postpone the opening? I hope they let me go home. What does your savior do? Where does he live? Again, very quietly, I asked the daughter. Again, her father noticed her extremely interested look towards the young man, who seemed to be asleep. Intrigued, Liam asked with a smile. He is a brave fellow. I appreciate him, and I want to help him. I'll give him a chance to make something of himself. What does that mean? He helped me, and now I'm going to help him, Liam replied, telling his daughter about Oliver's memory loss. You want to find his family. That's in between. But it's not a fact that he has them either. He's staying with us for now. You seriously bring a stranger into the house or put him in one of your apartments to begin with until he gets stronger. I think I'll let him live in our house, Liam pondered quietly aloud. And then maybe Dad can find a place in our business. He's a bum after all. And you take him home in an indignant whisper, Camilla said. Give him some money and let him go. It's enough that he is in the same room with you. I've never seen you treat strangers this way before. No one's ever saved me before. Besides, he reminds me a lot of someone. But that's not the point. Once in my life, I wanted to really help someone, and I have the means. So I'm going to follow my wish. I see that it's useless to argue with you, Camilla concluded. But if he's going to live in our house, it wouldn't hurt to get him in order. He's getting up already. The doctor has allowed him to go quietly. Then tomorrow, I'll get my best barber to do something decent with his head and beard. I'm glad you got involved in helping a good man with a pretty smile, Liam declared. But you'd have to ask him. Then the boy turned on his side and opened his eyes. Oliver immediately turned to her, saying, Camilla, how would you feel about a little change of image? I mean, and she did the scissor thing next to her chin with her hands. I can bring a hairdresser, if you don't mind. I would be much obliged to you. With a smile, the boy answered. What's the big deal about each other? Liam became indignant. They look almost the same age as you. Keep it simple. That's right, Camilla agreed. The next day, Liam's daughter entered the room with a red-headed man of indeterminate age, dressed stylishly and fashionably. He stroked his neat beard and looked thoughtfully at Oliver. He seated her on a chair and then proceeded to work. Liam grinned when Camilla and her hairdresser arrived, marveled at his tall stature and pumped-up torso. Oliver before covering his capes for a haircut, though his abs were covered with a bandage. The rest of his body spoke eloquently of his familiarity with strength training or exercise. While Barber conjured up Oliver's head and beard, Camilla drove to the mall. She soon returned and brought with her several bags of well-known brands. So these are your clothes and shoes, she said and put the bags beside Oliver's bed. I hope I don't get the wrong size. Liam Sager's transformation was above reproach. The red-headed barber was pleased with his work. He handed the mirror to Oliver. What do you think? It's great. Thank you, Barber. With a satisfied smile, he gathered his tools into his suitcase and, after saying goodbye, left. Camilla once again walked around the guy sitting in the chair. It was a different matter altogether. Did she appreciate the result? Should I try on some clothes? Give Oliver a break, her father objected. Besides, it's time for dinner. The food is coming from the restaurant. All right, I'll see you tomorrow. Camilla nodded to Oliver and then jumped out of the room. How do you like my daughter? Liam asked proudly. Isn't she beautiful? Oliver agreed. But I couldn't give her away in marriage. She refuses every prospective suitor. They didn't teach children at her age, and she's still a child herself. You are lucky with your daughter, the guy commented. She is a kind and open person. My wife Emma, she is Camilla's stepmother, thinks differently. Sometimes she reproaches me for spoiling my daughter. She once called her an overprivileged bitch. I, of course, warned her to be careful what she said about my daughter. But maybe Emma was right about something. I think she's wrong. It's her subjective opinion. I wish it were. Your spouse must have come from a poor family. She's been doing everything on her own. That's why she's annoyed with Camilla, who grew up in a different environment. And you are right, and you seem to know people. Liam looked at Nathan with amazement. A few days later, both Liam and his savior were discharged. With a stylish haircut and new clothes, Oliver looked like a model from a fashion magazine, and he held himself with a rare confidence and freedom, as if he had always looked this good. Father, do you mind if I steal Oliver? Asked Camilla, who suddenly appeared on the threshold of the room. When the men were about to leave, there was a car waiting for us. What do you need it for? Father was astonished. I want to show him the salon and the barbershop. The opening is in 3 days. In fact, I would like to take a picture of Oliver on the walls of my salon to post on social media. For publicity purposes, the girl declared you won't refuse, will you? She turned to the young man. On the contrary, thank you for the opportunity to be useful. I'm for the balance of taking and giving. You've already given me a lot. I want to give something in return. So you can use me for peaceful and good purposes, Oliver stated, with a smile on his face. Then you will bring Oliver home yourself. Liam ordered. All right, but don't wait up for us anytime soon. Camilla said she was leaving. We'll have lunch somewhere by ourselves. She took him by the arm, and they walked quickly toward the exit. They spent the whole day together. They went to the barber shop, where professional photographers took lots of pictures of Oliver from different angles, against different backgrounds, and in different settings. Then Camilla decided to keep him company in the photo. After the photo shoot, they ate lunch at a restaurant and drove around town in the car. The girl chattered away and told Oliver about her past projects and the business prospects she had just started. It was obvious that she was very enthusiastic about her new business, and the boy only smiled as he listened to her and kept his eyes on her. She wanted to look at him all the time herself. He looked stunning. She hadn't done her best for nothing. But also his natural beauty. Not worth it. What struck her most was that he wasn't the least bit embarrassed by her familiar surroundings. It was as if he had always lived like this himself. Oliver gallantly gave her a hand, opened the door, and promoted her to a chair in the restaurant. He was very good at navigating the restaurant menu and ordering unusual dishes for the common man. Who was he, really? Thought Camilla with surprise. What can you tell me about yourself? She asked at the coffee shop where they stopped before they went home. Because I talk all day and you don't say anything. Unfortunately, I have nothing to say. Your father told me you have amnesia. How do you live with that? I hope to remember everything someday. Promise me I'll be the first person you tell about yourself. Okay, with a smile, I answered Camilla. Guy's beautiful country house, Vorontsov, had 3 floors, where there were bedrooms, libraries, and a huge hall for receiving guests. Dining room, billiards room, swimming pool, winter garden, summer terraces, and rooms for assistants. Oliver offered to pick his own room on any floor. Mine was on the top floor. Camilla whispered in his ear. There are 2 guest bedrooms nearby. If one is very comfortable, then show it to me. Oliver whispered back to her. We are upstairs. Camilla informed her father and led her guest to the elevator. Liam didn't take long to shout after them. Come down to dinner. 20 minutes later, an elevator with glass doors took the young people up to the 3rd floor. There is a small library, a mini gym with exercise machines, and most of all, there is a wonderful view from the windows, told Camilla as she led Oliver to the bedroom. This is my room. She pointed at one of the doors. I usually live in a city apartment, but I go to my parents' house a lot too, especially when Emma is away. I try not to cross paths with her. We can't stand each other, and I'm glad our rooms are on different floors. On the other hand, I'd suggest you take this bedroom, or would you look at both guest rooms? Trusting his choice, Oliver said, still with the same wonderful smile. The room, with its large bed and beautiful furnishings, was bright, spacious, and comfortable. The guest liked it as much as the rest of the house. Here is the bathroom. Camilla pointed to one of the doors, and here is the closet. But we have yet to fill it with our stuff that we're saving up. The 3 of them had dinner. Emma was held up by business in town. All 3 of them joked and laughed a lot. Liam couldn't recall such a relaxed, pleasant atmosphere at the table. After Sabrina's death, her daughter was clearly in a great mood, which has been a rarity lately. She did not sit down at the table with Emma. It was even good that his wife wasn't home yet. Did you think, Liam, how incredibly delicious your cooking is? Oliver marveled as he served himself a second portion of meatloaf. Liam agreed. Yes, Anna knows how to prepare the most exquisite dishes. Liam agreed. She's been with us for a long time, and we're very happy with her. Except that Emma can be hard to please. Please, let's not spoil dinner, Camilla asked, remembering her. She was in a mood to spoil it. She said she'd have her tea in her room and got up from the table, taking a large mug with her. Damn me, Liam was upset. We were getting along so well. Oliver went up the stairs to the third floor after dinner and went into the library. He looked at the spines of the books, chose one, and sat down in a comfortable chair, near which a floor lamp was burning. A pleasant breeze was blowing from the open window, and the young man immersed himself in reading. He did not notice how Camilla came up to him. "What are you reading?" she asked. Oliver showed him the cover of the book. "Really?" She raised her eyebrows in surprise. "Do you read everything in the original? You know Japanese." "It turns out that I do," Oliver simply replied, surprised. "I don't mind. Would it be all right if I sat here?" "No, of course. I'd love your company." "Can you read aloud?" Camilla asked. And Oliver read a few poems in Japanese. "After all, it sounds funny to me, and I could never get through it. And of course you don't remember where you learned the language." "I like that I know it. Do you have this book in your library?" "Daddy got it from the real Japanese. I was into Haiku at the time, but that quickly passed. I kept the book. Can you translate it into Russian?" "The last thing I read," asked the girl, and she covered him. "The wind made his bed. Abandoned child just about me," sadly remarked Camilla. "I often feel like an abandoned child. It happened after my mother died." "I'm sorry," Oliver said quietly. He put down the book and took the girl's hand. "I would like to take a walk on your garden paths. Would you like to go together?" "That is a wonderful idea." Camilla perked up. "I'll show you around." They walked around the garden until late at night and talked about literature, music, and painting. It turned out that Oliver knew a lot about these subjects, and Camilla listened to him without hiding her surprise. Emma returned just as they were walking, and to the joy of the girl who did not want to meet her stepmother. And in the morning, Emma left before Oliver and Camilla came down for breakfast. Liam was drinking his coffee, staring at his phone. He looked extremely worried. "What is it, Dad?" Camilla asked, wishing her father a good morning. "My interpreter was ill at the wrong time," my father answered, nodding in greeting to his daughter and guest. "And today the Japanese are coming to conclude the contract. Now my assistants are urgently looking for her replacement. All in all, 300 hours. Do you need a translator from Japanese?" Camilla clarified. Taking a seat at the table, Oliver moved a chair for her. "I guess they understand English," Liam said without taking his eyes off the phone. "Oliver knows Japanese, and perhaps even English," Camilla declared. "That's true." Liam took his eyes off the screen of his cell phone and stared at Oliver. "Yes," modestly replied the boy. "And you can be the interpreter to the Japanese today." "I can, if you are satisfied with my candidacy." "Oliver, you are my savior." Rejoiced, Liam exclaimed, quickly dialed a text message and, putting the phone on the table, began with an appetite. "Eat a sandwich with caviar. You saved me again." "Good for you." Oliver smiled and had breakfast. "And we have to find a way to solve your problem with your documents." Liam thought for a while. "I will use my connections to make your passport official. But we have to decide what your last name is. What if I say that you are our distant relative? Let's put you down as Lamb. You can choose any patronymic. What do you say?" "I say I agree. And I like Andreevich." "That's good. After signing the contract with the Japanese, we'll take care of your documents." "Camilla," he turned to his daughter. "Somewhere, please pick up clothes for Oliver in formal style for today's meeting." "Don't thank me," laughed Camilla as her father left. And Oliver looked at her meaningfully. "Are you angry with me?" she asked seriously. He answered with a smile. "Come on, let's get ready. We do not have much time." The day passed. Camilla stretched out on the big bed in Oliver's room with a smile. He himself was in the shower, and she didn't feel like getting up just yet. It was such a lovely morning. She called the maid, asking her to bring them coffee and scones. Oliver room. Yesterday, after successfully signing a contract with the Japanese, Liam suggested that everyone at the meeting have dinner at the restaurant. So they were joined by Camilla in a lavish black floor-length dress. Oliver was dressed in strict dark suits, a white shirt, and a tie. They looked very harmonious. The two of them drove home in a wall car, and at first they went to their rooms. But not 2 minutes later, Camilla quickly entered Oliver's room. He had already taken off his jacket and shirt. Immediately, she kissed him determinedly. Passion instantly seized them both. Camilla, with a smile, remembering the previous night, heard a knock at the door. Yes, come in. She hoped to see the maid with the coffee. But her father was standing in the doorway. What are you doing here? Surprised. He's waiting for Laura with coffee, Camilla said. She did not want to advertise her relationship with Oliver. At least not now. And then her father showed up at such a bad time. What did you want? I went to see Oliver, but I'll see him later. And Liam closed the door on the backside. Oh, shit, Camilla exclaimed. What a morning this is ruined. She thought with annoyance that her father would want to talk. But when she met him later in the dining room, he acted as if nothing had happened. And she was relieved. And Liam didn't know how to behave himself. He was the one who brought Oliver into the house, and his daughter was in the guest's room, so she'd come to him on her own. Yeah, that's not surprising. Last night, there was more than a spark between young people. There was lightning. It was too good. A visibly thoughtful look. He was on his way to the office this morning. You know Rita? He said, sitting next to me in the back seat of Genya. I think my daughter is long overdue for marriage. You found her a fiancé. The wife grinned. She gets along great with Oliver. So let them get married. Liam voiced the thought in his head. Are you ready to give your daughter in marriage to a bum? Emma was surprised. You know nothing about this Oliver except his name and what he has told you about himself. You are wrong. Liam protested. He has already surprised me a couple of times with his knowledge of Japanese. I don't think it's a good idea anyway. My wife. But Liam had already made up his mind to talk to his daughter after the grand opening of the beauty salon and barbershop. During the buffet for the honored guests, he saw the lovers looking at each other again. Oliver and Camilla were already at home when he summoned his daughter to his office. There is a conversation, he began. Just do not have any moralizing. Abruptly cut him off. I am an adult and have the right to a private life in which you do not have to interfere. Wait a minute, my dear. Perhaps you will like it if I interfere. What do you mean? Camilla asked in astonishment. I don't mind. If you and Oliver are married, are you trying to get me into good hands again? Her daughter said so indignantly. Before, you were going to match me up with the sons of your business partners, and now you are going to give me in marriage to a man that you have known for only a week. But that doesn't stop you from sleeping with him. That's no reason to get married anyway. I don't want to get married at all. That's the spirit of contradiction in you. I can see that you two get along very well. I would even say that you have feelings between you. I can see that. And Oliver is a good person. So why don't you start a family? I have other plans for my life. Cut off, Camilla. Let's make some small adjustments, my father retorted. And it doesn't bother you that Oliver doesn't have anything on his mind, but I have more than enough. Liam was quite serious. I'll give him the brickyard as a wedding present. Here he is with the business. He will develop it on his own. He certainly has a head on his shoulders. In fact, everything is fine-tuned there. And I will be informed of his decisions, so everything will be under control, including me. Is that what you want? All more disintegrated, indignantly asked Camilla. Yes, I'm ready to trust you with him. He has passed the test. He stood up for me, risking his life. So I will not let anyone hurt you. But will you admit that he is your favorite? Softer already? Father asked. I see the way you look at him. Dad, that's not how I imagined the whole thing leading up to the wedding. Calmer now, Camilla said. I wanted a declaration of love and a marriage proposal in a romantic setting. And now my own father is trying to fix me up like I'm a piece of junk. And you're right. Let Oliver propose to you, like he's supposed to do at your behest. That's none of your business. Tolek is, and don't you dare refuse him. I can see that he has feelings for you. He just understands that you and he are from different worlds. That's why he'll never risk making a decisive move. Only he's in our world now too. And that's what I'm going to tell him." Camilla waved her hand and left her father's office. In fact, she was really quite keen on Oliver. But this was the way her father approached her personal life, which seemed unacceptable to her. Anger overwhelmed her. She went into her room, closed the door behind her, put on her headphones, and turned on the music. She did not hear Oliver come to the door and knock quietly, and when she didn't open the door, he went down the stairs to meet Liam, who had called him in to talk. The large windows of the bedroom on the 24th floor offered a fantastic view of the city at night. Oliver took off his jacket, hung it on the back of his chair, and cast his eyes over the king-size bed. Today was his wedding day to Camilla. The wedding night lay ahead, the most joyous, long-awaited event for two loving hearts, but it was hard on the young spouse's soul. When Liam invited him into his office 3 months ago, he had no idea what kind of conversation awaited him. "Oliver, what I'm about to say may seem strange to you," Liam began, "but I wish you and Camilla would get married." "Wait, hear me out. I see that you two have developed a close relationship, and I see how my daughter has changed for the better with you." "Yes, and our relationship with her has improved. And I've grown very fond of you. You're like a son to me. I suggest that you legally join our family. As a wedding gift, I'll sign over the brick factory to you. It's a thriving, very profitable enterprise that you can develop as you wish. Camilla has an apartment in town, but if you want your own country house, we'll decide that too. You can stay in this house too. There's plenty of room. What do you say? How do you feel about my daughter?" "Liam, I must confess that I've grown quite fond of your daughter," Oliver said at the time. "And I think she has a soft spot for me too. I am sincerely glad that you are willing to trust me with her future, but I don't know if she will accept my proposal." "Well, find out. Buy her a ring. Propose in some romantic setting. Girls appreciate that." "Yeah, well, you'll figure it out, I guess. And I, as they say, bless your union." After signing the contract with the Japanese, Liam handed Oliver a bank card, telling him that he had earned the money honestly. After checking the balance, the young man saw a fairly large amount for a few hours of work as an interpreter. This money would be enough for a ring and other trappings for a romantic evening. He didn't know if Camilla would agree, but he was more concerned about something entirely different with the girl he'd managed to love. Oliver wasn't exactly being honest. And he never dared to tell the truth then. Camilla accepted his proposal happily, and now they are legally husband and wife. 3 months later. During that time, their feelings only grew stronger. Oliver was already working at the plant that Liam presented to him. Successfully handling the management position, she quickly figured out the production processes. Profits were growing, and it was possible not to change anything in my life, since it made such a turnaround. But for some reason, it was after the wedding that Oliver realized he had to tell his lawful wife everything, and he was sorry he hadn't done it sooner. "Honey, will you help me take off my dress?" Camilla came up behind him and hugged him. "I can't do it by myself," she added coquettishly. "I need to talk to you decisively," Oliver declared, turning away from the window. Camilla also looked him in the eyes. "What look? Are you frightening me?" Agitatedly, the bride said, "How differently I imagined our wedding night. What's the matter? Did you remember something from your past life?" "Let's sit down," the boy suggested. He sat Camilla down on the bed and sat down in the chair in front of him. "I have to confess to you that I didn't really have any memory loss." "What?" Camilla looked at him in amazement. "Who are you? And why were you pretending? Does the name Lucas mean anything to you? My father had a friend with that last name. I think his name was..." She hesitated, remembering Benjamin. "Oliver finished it for her, and I'm his son. But why did you hide it?" Camilla was shocked. "Your father, Liam, he was responsible for the death of my parents. He wanted to take all our family business and destroy our whole family. He succeeded in the first one, and the second one killed my parents. I lived abroad for a long time, studying and working. My father's assistants after my parents died. They advised me not to return to my homeland. They were sure that your father would get to me, but I came anyway. I wanted to avenge their deaths. I hated your father so much, I wanted to kill him. Oliver, what are you talking about? My father had nothing to do with your parents' deaths. How do you know that? He got my father, through his men, to sign papers handing over almost his entire business. But that wasn't enough for him. So he killed them. Shut up. Please, I want to tell you everything. I returned to my hometown a few months ago, dreaming of getting to know Liam. But I could only watch him from afar because there were always guards around. I lived in the most backward part of town. I had some money left in my accounts, but I was advised not to withdraw anything so that I wouldn't be remembered. The night of the fight, I followed your father. I thought I was lucky that this was the right moment to do what I wanted to do. Did you really want to kill him? Was Camilla horrified? Yes, I did. Then why did you stand up for him? Those scumbags, if they didn't kill him, would have hurt him. I couldn't let that happen. This is my revenge. I had a good reason, and they had no right to do that to Liam. I don't understand. You risked your life to protect my father so that you could kill him yourself. At first, I couldn't let anyone else do it, and then the fight didn't end the way I thought it would. I was wounded, and your father took it upon himself to help me. His attitude toward me made me doubt that he was really such a mean and greedy man. I was convinced by my father's deputies, whom I considered to be family friends. I decided to do nothing. I suddenly wanted to get to know your father better, but I couldn't tell you who I really was. And amnesia. It was the first thing that came to my mind. And the more I got to know Liam, the more I doubted that he was capable of killing my parents so mercilessly. Why did you marry me? I loved you. It's true, and now you no longer wish to avenge the deaths of your parents. You don't see my father in anything anymore. My attitude toward him has changed, partly because of you. He doesn't look like a killer himself. Maybe he's not responsible for Mom and Dad's deaths. I want to find out. I'm sure my father had nothing to do with it, and I'm ready to help you find out the truth. Tears glistened in Camilla's eyes. Oliver knelt down and took her hands in his. You gave my life meaning back, he said, kissing her fingers. When I first saw you in the hospital room, I thought I could have lived my whole life with a girl like you. Before I knew it, I fell in love with you. Camilla ran her hand over his head. Do you know who I am now? Don't you regret marrying me? On the contrary, I've always wondered who you really are. What was your past like? And I was afraid that this past would catch up with us, and it would turn out that you had some obligations to people that you didn't remember. Everything is finally falling into place, and we're going to get to the truth together. Oliver suggests. Let me help you out of your dress, Oliver suggests. He gently undoes the many buttons on Camilla's back, kissing every inch of her body. And as the dress slid to the floor, he hugged his wife tightly. Ironically, Oliver had become the owner of the business over which his father and Liam had once quarreled. And now he had to find out what had really happened. For several days, he went through the documents, cross-checked figures and dates, checked reports and plans, and did other things that would help him get closer to unraveling the louse of his mystery. More often on the documents, he found the signature of his second wife, Liama Mary, whose last name, he found out, had been Orlova before her marriage. She was the head of the legal department when his father was forced to sign the documents. But later, after she married Liam, she took over part of the company. And most of the assets were Lucas' businesses. Camilla, your stepmother has something to do with this whole thing we're dealing with over dinner, Oliver told his wife. I think it wouldn't do any harm for us to find out where she goes besides work, and who she meets, said the girl. I have a verified person who will find out everything. A few days later, the couple got a report with pictures of where Emma was and what she was doing out of the house and out of the office. It turned out that she had been meeting with one of the deputies of Oliver's father's firm, one of those who had assured him of Liam's guilt in Lucas's death. And it also turned out that the masher, Emma, was part-time her lover, as eloquently attested by photos of their meeting in the besieged salon. "She is cheating on Daddy," outraged Camilla. "I'll give him those photos. Let him deal with her." "The fact of adultery is clear," Oliver agreed. "But her involvement in my parents' deaths is still under question." Emma sat in the chair, clenching her fists. How far she had walked to the goal, and how close she was. Her plan could have come to fruition in the very near future. But now this bum Oliver intervened, so that everything could have worked out just perfectly if he hadn't intervened. If only that night, when Liam had gotten drunk and left, that damned savior hadn't appeared unguarded. And now he had taken over the brickyard, the principal object of her desires. Emma was 10 years old when her father hanged himself. Doctors said the suicide was due to lingering depression and his unwillingness to get treatment. Her mother thought otherwise. Her father had worked at the brick factory for more than 20 years. He started out as a simple worker right out of high school, and by perestroika, he was the deputy director. Theodore fought to the end against the closure of the factory. Only the director decided otherwise, and simply gave up. Then Mary's father intended to buy the plant himself, colluding with his plant colleagues, but the purchase was intercepted by two young upstarts, Liam and Lucas. They paid more. Mom was sure that the bribes were given to the right people. In the end, my father was left out. All of the co-workers with whom he had wanted to buy the plant were invited to work at the newly opened plant. But Emma's father was not invited. They simply forgot about him. Pride didn't allow him to remind himself. He gave almost a quarter of a century to his beloved plant with tears in his eyes, said little Emma's mother. After her father's death, to go ask for a place there, to beg on his knees. No way. Let them choke on those filthy upstarts. But know this, my girl. They're the ones to blame for your dad's death. Lucas and Liam, these two ghouls, went on for years. Every time there was a story in the local paper or on television about the achievements of these businessmen, her mother was tearfully repeating that if they had not buried her father, Emma would have lived like a princess. And so they barely made ends meet and barely survived. So her mother worked so hard that she left early, leaving Mary, who had barely reached adulthood. All alone, after graduating from high school, the girl went to law school, then to college. She tried to study only for straight A's, and in her head, she was stuck. One thought whoever was guilty of her father's death would be punished, and their successful enterprise would go to Emma. She changed her surname from Maslova to Orlova. It was her mother's maiden name, so her family's enemies wouldn't figure it out. Whose daughter is she? Her path to working at the company was a rough one. She had to be the best at what she did to get a job there. It took experience, and Emma got it through hard work, constant study, and upgrading her skills. When a vacancy arose in the legal department, she could have headed it, but the position was taken at the time. She went as an ordinary lawyer. She passed the interview brilliantly, and less than a month later, when the head of the department died suddenly, she was appointed to take her place because she had already managed to win the favor of all the people in the company. Who was responsible for this appointment? At the time, Liam's wife was already seriously ill, and Liam himself had a conflict with Lucas. Mary immediately had a plan. How could Lucas take advantage of this so that Lucas's business would go to Liam? Next, yes, she was ready to move on, and so she did. But first, she prepared the documents and hired people to get Lucas to sign them. Those people had nothing to do with the startup company, but it looked like they had been directed by Liam. In addition, one of Lucas' deputies had been influenced by Mary and had agreed to help her, but she was still taking a great risk. The whole thing could have opened at any moment. Liam had been in Israel with his sick wife, but on his return he could have met the insurance man. Then it would all come out. Unhappy. Chance set the record straight. Whether or not it had been set up, it was on Mary's order, So she got rid of one of the culprits in her father's death, and all his assets went to Liam. After his wife's death, he turned over the reins of the company to his deputies, and Emma had already managed to gain their trust. The first deputy became her lover, so she was aware of all the economic affairs, and the legal support went directly through her. When Liam finally realized that he had become the owner of Gorokhov's business, he tried to figure out how this could have happened without his knowledge. Here, Emma panicked, but the decent meeting did not show his face, and tried to turn on the full power of his feminine charms to her immense glee. She succeeded. Liam began to actively show his interest in her, and she, through skillful manipulation, intensified it with each new meeting. Liam quickly craved her affection and comfort, and she readily played the role of a caring and understanding woman in love. No one knows what it cost her, but it was impossible to achieve her goal without it. Everything Lucas had passed on to Liam would now pass to her, along with all of Liam's own assets. She had to become his wife. She had achieved that too. How did she want to deal with the daughter of her hated husband? But she had to wait patiently for the right moment. Only sometimes her nerves gave out. She said too much, and his daughter really pissed Emma off. It was Camilla, the spoiled and humiliated slacker. She got everything on a silver platter. All the things Emma herself could have had if her father had managed to become the owner of the brick factory that Lucas and Liam had so brazenly taken over from him, what drove him to suicide in the end. Emma managed to turn her daughter against her father and her father against his daughter. In time, she planned to disinherit this delicate puppet entirely. But now she is married. And this, Oliver, is very complicated. What bothered Emma most was that no one knew who he was or where he came from. And it was obvious that he was truly in love with Camilla, and she was in love with him too. So the task became more difficult. The brickyard was already out of Mary's hands. We couldn't let Liam think of anything else to give to his son-in-law's daughter. We must act. We must make sure that the startup company passes into Mary's hands. But how exactly was that question going through her head when her hated husband suddenly entered her office? He was blacker than a cloud. "Darling, am I glad to see you?" Radiantly, smiling, said Emma. "Is something wrong? You should not be happy." Liam yelled, demanding an explanation, and he threw a pile of pictures on her desk. Someone had taken a picture of Emma in the beleaguered salon with her young lover. This guy, the monsieur, was her outlet. Otherwise, she would just go crazy, overwhelmed by her constant disgust with Liam and his daughter. "What does that mean?" "Answer," yelled Liam. Emma frantically tried to think of something. It was too obvious to refute in any way. She realized that she was cornered and that all her plans to destroy Liam had crumbled. "Stupid question, Liam." Quite calmly, she said, "I'm having a wonderful time with the young man in these pictures. After all, according to their prenup, she'll have a nice payoff too. Then she'll come up with a new plan. If she can't take over the business, she can at least wipe out Liam and his dead friend Lucas. She'll be able to cheat on me for a long time. How long do you think I could stand living with you?" Mary's face contorted with a grimace of hatred and contempt. "I'm a young, beautiful woman, and my rear end is shining," said a man who has lost all his masculine attractiveness. "You think that married life with you can bring me joy and happiness. So why did you marry me?" "Discouraged?" asked Liam. Righteous anger was replaced by resentment. "Was it only for the money?" "Oh no, my dear. I wanted more." Emma covered her face with her hands. "If you only knew how much I hate you, how I dream of your death every day." "But why?" Liam asked confusedly. "My paternal surname is Maslova. Orlova is the maiden mother. Do you remember Theodore?" "I don't recall being even more confused," said Liam. "You don't even remember him, and he hung himself. Because of you and Lucas. I didn't know. You never told me that. But why us? What did we do to him?" "He wanted to buy the brickyard he'd taken over from him. You and your friend, that's Theodore. I remember him. But wait a minute. I don't understand anything. He told us he changed his mind about buying the plant. We asked him for a job afterwards, but he refused. I don't believe you, yelled Emma, hissing with anger. You ruined my father, and I wanted revenge on you more than anything in the world, and I almost succeeded. Healthy, anyway. So you were involved in the deaths of Benjamin and Laura. Liam was amazed. I wish you and your little girl had been in the same car. Emma grabbed her purse and ran out of the office. She was shaking. She couldn't get a word out. She rushed across the floor, took the elevator down to the underground parking lot, and got into her car. Tears welled up in her eyes. The terrible pain was torturing her soul. How she wished she could just let it go. It was simply unbearable. Emma let out an angry growl and pressed down on the gas pedal. The car raced forward. The phone rang. It was Lucas' deputy who had helped her get him out of the way. But now he kept demanding money and Emma's promised position at the startup company. She angrily smirked at his plans for some promised future that collapsed today, just as hers did. Emma, I need to see you urgently. He yelled into the phone. All right, I'll be right there. Tears streamed from his eyes. The car flew at breakneck speed. Rita did not know what to do or how to live. She wanted so badly to take revenge on those who had ruined her life. But it didn't work out. She ended up at the bottom of the barrel. How painful to realize that. How painful. And suddenly there was a sharp clang of scraping metal. She didn't even realize it. Instant death and darkness. A year passed. Anna was fussing over the stove, and the potatoes were almost ready. But there was something else to add to the potatoes. She liked everything to be perfect. But Katya will finish it herself. Sit down at the table. Liam Dmitrievich called her. It was a family dinner. Only the closest people at the table were Camilla and Oliver, and her daughter Anna, with her husband and granddaughter. The past year was difficult for the Liami family. Anna Petrovna then found folk recipes to support Liam, not only with pills and injections. She tried to cook dishes that he particularly liked. He spent a lot of time at home, giving the whole company to his son-in-law, who happened to be Lucas's son, which was another shock to Liam. And he finally realized who this young man reminded him of. And now his daughter bears the last name of his longtime friend Oliver. Camilla, of course, had not told Liam that his future son-in-law had wanted to take his life at first. So too many unpleasant events and discoveries occurred, and his health took a turn for the worse. And all were glad that in the person of the home cook, he suddenly found a pleasant companion and a caring woman devoid of selfish pretensions. Anna is the same age as Liam. They had many interests in common, and their values in life were the same. Both are considered family. The most important thing in his life was that Anna Petrovna was widowed 15 years ago. But she had a daughter, whom she successfully married. And then a granddaughter was born. For more than 10 years, the woman worked at Leamy's and appreciated the place. She loved the family. Until Mary came into it. But even though she wanted to run away immediately after remarrying, Liama Anna stayed, decided to adjust, and simply did her job honestly, ignoring Mary's unwarranted comments about her. After her death, Liam just wanted to provide support, and it turned out that there were feelings between them. It was unexpected for both, and a month ago Liam proposed marriage. Anna Petrovna accepted his proposal and immediately, at the request of her future husband, found a girl, Katya, who replaced her in the kitchen. Only some of the dishes the now mistress of the big house preferred to cook herself. Alyosha, Dober, sit down at last. Liam got up from the table and led his wife by the hand into the dining room. I have a toast. He raised his glass of red wine. I'm very glad we're together today. He nodded to Oliver and his daughter-in-law Anna, and that soon there will be more of us. He looked meaningfully at his daughter, who had her hand on her pregnant belly. I am glad that my personal life has become happier. He kissed his wife's hand and said that the people close to me are getting along. I'm glad that my daughter's business is thriving. Daughter, Your beauty salon, the barbershop, turned out to be a successful venture. I'm glad I can hand over my business with a light heart to you, Oliver. He turned to the guy. Especially since part of it is rightfully yours. Thank you all for being with me today. Here's to you, my dear family. Liam, with a perfectly happy face, sat at the table and thought about how well this life had turned out. He had been through a lot, but now he felt unusually easy and free.